I sogni hanno la forza di connetterci al futuro. Ci trasmettono l'energia che nasce dal desiderio. Ma a volte i nostri sogni si connettono con quelli di qualcun altro e insieme conquistano il mondo.
Pronto?
Una cosa così. Il cuore è un po' più
Tridimensionale.
Va bene.
per me è la migliore.
Team, la forza delle connessioni.
Tutti viviamo momenti unici che vogliamo proteggere. Scegli Immagina adesso di Generali, un'unica polizza che evolve con te. Contatta subito i nostri agenti Generali per scoprire la soluzione più adatta a te. Prima della sottoscrizione leggere il set informativo su generali.it. Generali, partner di vita.
Mi ricordo il giorno che siamo partiti per il nostro viaggio. Anche se è stato molto tempo fa. Già allora avevamo grandi obiettivi. Volevamo contribuire al progresso del nostro paese e renderlo un posto sempre migliore. E ci siamo impegnati ogni giorno per farlo. Come in tutti i viaggi, strada facendo il nostro bagaglio si è riempito. Di ricordi, di emozioni, di esperienza. Ogni persona che abbiamo incontrato ha contribuito a rendere la nostra squadra più forte. Passo dopo passo abbiamo camminato sempre più veloce per avvicinarci al futuro. Dopo 60 anni il nostro percorso continua insieme. Verso un domani migliore. 60 anni di futuro e di energia.
Civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Buongiorno, bentrovati a tutti.
Good morning.
So, promoting growth and supporting the weakest is the title of our meeting. I would like to welcome all those people who are physically here in the audience and those who are watching us and listening to us online. So, the title of this meeting is a very special one, as well as the guests that I'm going to introduce. They are probably the most suitable people to analyze this topic, considering the special and extremely complex situation we're going through right now. We know that the energy crisis, the problem of price rises for domestic bills, job problems, the crisis that's become even more challenging since the beginning of the war in February. And then this political uncertainty that we are experiencing right now due to the electoral campaign. So everything that we've seen so far underlines the fact that all these events will increase the gap between North and South, and also the gap between those who are experiencing difficulties and those who are not. So the title is Promoting Growth and Supporting the Weakest. Now I would like to introduce our guests, both those who are here and those who are with us remotely. So we have Roberto Garofoli, Undersecretary to the Presidency of the Council of Ministers, Massimiliano Giansanti, President of Confagricoltura, Francesco Mutti, President of Centromarca, and then we have Francesco Starace, Managing Director of Enel, who's with us remotely, and Simone Bemporad, Deputy Chairman of Generali. Welcome. Now, I don't want to be too long. I've already explained why we chose this title, so I'd like to ask Undersecretary Garofoli the following. Considering the title that we see, we know that it refers to topics that you are very interested in. So I'd like to ask a first comment on this topic. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And my thanks to Emmanuele Forlani and to the meeting. I would like to start by commenting on the title, Promoting Growth and Supporting the Weakest. This title actually captures the main efforts of the government in the last few months, the reference point of the last 18 months that have been extremely difficult. Difficult because different emergencies came into play, some of them totally unexpected. We had to face the pandemic, and then after that, the war in Ukraine, and then the inflation peaks with all the repercussions and implications that it has. And that led to problems in some production sectors, social problems, and then the water crisis. And during all this, we had to work hard in order, for example, to approve the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. We had to redefine our governance rules. And we had to start working to achieve the first goal that we'd set for ourselves. So the main point in the action of our government was promoting growth and consolidating the existing growth. there were a lot of difficulties, a lot of uncertainties. But we have defined a path towards growth, and we are growing. It's the sixth quarter in which the GDP has grown significantly. Right now, the growth rate is 3.4%, higher than the GDP of France or Germany. And the second point that your title mentions is supporting the weakest, because all of these emergencies, all of these crises increase the suffering of our people, increased social problems, and put at risk this path towards growth that we are following, because the inflation peaks, the increase of prices for raw materials and energy impacted our path towards growth. So they are a source of concern for all of us. So in my opinion, facing such dramatic emergencies, we need to be very prompt in acting, especially those who have to define public policies. In the last 6 months, in order to remedy, at least partially, to the problems that Ukraine and the inflation peaks caused, as I said, we allocated 50 million euros. And as I know that this is something that everyone is concerned about, I would like to mention the fact that the last action before the summer break was the approval of a decree law that allocated resources, significant resources, I would say, using some savings that we had available. Looking at the last quarter of the month, we have an electricity and gas bonus that will shield families in difficulty from price rises for gas and electricity. So all the fiscal components and elements of gas and electricity have been reduced to zero. And we continue measure that Germany has done just now. We have decided to reduce VAT on gas to continue this reduction. This reduction started in 2021 and has been extended till the end of the year. And as for companies, considering the huge rises in the price of gas and electricity, we've extended tax credits covering parts of the electrical bills that companies had to pay. And not just for companies that use a significant amount of gas and electricity, but also many other companies. And we've also reduced taxes on diesel fuel and petrol. And the news that we heard about the exponential increase in the price of energy and raw materials will be monitored by the government to be aware of how things are evolving, and in order to react to this, following the indications of the Prime Minister and how he indicated the way to go. We are working in order to deal with another very important topic, also considering the risk of recession that is looming on the horizon. So we are working on the implementation of the National Resilience and Resistance Plan, which is, in my opinion, a huge opportunity to reduce territorial gaps, gender gaps, to allow an evolution and a development of our healthcare systems in order to strengthen our infrastructure. And also, this plan gives the country significant resources. Then it's up to companies to implement them in the right way. But we're talking about huge resources that will be extremely important for the next few years for our economic and social system. Thank you, Mr. Garofoli. I think I can say on behalf of all the people who are here listening to us, your words have been very reassuring for us, because there is, for sure, a kind of concern about the fact that things keep moving. So all the measures that were required have been defined. Now, I would like to ask Simone Bemporad to speak his mind. We would like to understand whether, from the point of view of Generali Group, the situation is as we see it, or whether, from your point of view, this gap is increasing, and whether there are initiatives, specific initiatives, that we can look at in order to bridge this gap. Because, of course, institutions have responsibilities, but also each one of us has to play his part. Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. Now, I'd like to thank the meeting for the invitation and for their constant commitment to offer us the possibility of hearing about such important topics. I'm very sorry that I cannot be with you today. I'm in the US. I spoke to Arthur Brooks, a Harvard professor, who recently published a book that's called From Strength to Strength. That is one of the top sellers from the New York Times list. He teaches in Harvard a course that's called Leadership and Happiness, and it has 400 students in the temporary list waiting to be admitted. He's a theoretical supporter of overcoming differences, and he's a supporter of capitalism. The reason why I'm mentioning him is because he worked for 10 years, from 2009 till 2019, as president of the American Enterprise Institute, which is a think tank in the US. A think tank is an organization that are used by the administration to give thinkers to the government. So he worked always with great ethical requirements, and he made a very important question that you can see in the dialogue that he had with the Dalai Lama, and that is about the purpose of capitalism. And as a representative of a company which is an expression of capitalism, the question is very relevant. What is our purpose? First of all, build something and earn by living, and then serve others. So do something for the benefit of others. These three principles, these three pillars they may seem very simple, but they are extraordinary. And they are the guidelines that I try to follow when I started in Generali Group 9 years ago. And we created a movement within the company. I was given the responsibility of sustainability when I started working for Generali Group. And I know this is a word that is being used so much nowadays, but we try to transform the company using those 3 pillars that I mentioned. On the one hand, we wanted to transform the business according to the ESG principles. It's a long-term process, but we started it, and there's no way back. What does that mean, transforming business according to the ESG principles? Well, it's a revolution for the company. Once we are able to transform Generali into a company that will only sell products that have a clear link to the ESG criteria, this will be a turning point. As you know, the insurance business collects savings and then provides savings when it's necessary. We're talking about 700 billion euros, a huge amount. So we have products on the one hand and investments on the other. So we've started along this way. We have several products that are inspired by the ESG criteria. And for a business-generating company, this is not easy to do, and so very important. The other path that we followed focuses on bridging gaps. And imbalances and gaps are something that are all around us. They're not things that happen in a different continent. And a company like ours can prosper only if the environment, the surrounding environment, is one of prosperity. And of course, the state has to do its part, because this is what the state exists for, to try and guarantee and protect citizens. A few years back, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Milton Friedman Manifesto, when he wrote that social responsibility of companies is increasing profits. And that's true. Companies have to increase profits, otherwise they will collapse. But we cannot, for example, be the only luxurious building in an area of dilapidated houses. So we have to try and improve things, not for philanthropic reasons. So Generali Group is a very large group. We are very rich, so let's put money into a foundation. This is not what we want to do. Of course, it is important that we do, as Mr. Massimiliano Zuppi said. But we have to do more. We asked our employees, what is that a group like ours can do to try and help reduce differences and inequalities? We received 7,000 answers from our employees in a few days. We analyzed them, working on them with our leadership, but also turning to people outside the company. And we selected 2 main areas of interest, trying to do our part. First of all, parenthood for children from 0 to 6 years of age. That is when most of neural connections are created. If a child doesn't have a normal life in the first 6 years of his or her life, his or her brain will not be shaped in the right way. And there's no coming back from that. And the second point is entrepreneurship and work for refugees. Millions of people flee every year from emergency situations. And there's a part of them who have entrepreneurship attitude. So we focused on these 2 areas, and they have one thing in common, that is opportunities. Having a child that can grow into a healthy adult, having a person that is fleeing from a dramatic situation and can become an entrepreneur, means giving them opportunities, giving them the opportunity of leaving the margins of society. And we consider this not just as a first attempt. We wanted not to teach people, but to help people help others. Generali is an international leader, and Mr. Starace, who created Enel as an international company. Assicurazioni Generali is the first insuring company in Europe. So we created an organization that's called the Human Safety Net, is active in 26 countries worldwide, where we operate because we want to work where we are already present. We cooperate with 60 partner organizations, mostly NGOs. And even though these activities are financed by a rich company like Generali Group, we were able to use also other kind of funds, contribution by our colleagues or companies participating in this net. And all this additional amount is equal to Generali's contribution. We have reached 180,000 people for the parenthood activity for children from 0 to 6 years of age. But that's not enough. We also want to understand what is the qualitative impact of the people that we support. And then we contributed to the creation of 300 micro companies in France and Germany. Now we are looking at Italy and other countries. Companies created by refugees that then can give employment to other refugees or people in the nearby areas. On our website, you can find further details on this. This is a work that we want to continue through networks. We want to create a network for this. I would like to conclude now by making reference to Venice and San Marco Square. There is a palace, a building that belongs to Enel. We were able to restore it, and it's now open. It's been open in April. If you visit us in Venice, you will see an interactive exhibition that will help you understand about your potential and will help you see what we've done to help the people we want to improve.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bemporad. I think that many among the audience will take the opportunity and visit the exhibition you've just mentioned. So we've listened to a first round of points of view from the representative of the institutions and of a big company. Since we are in the midst of a particular period for the electoral campaign, we would like to underline the importance of these so-called intermediate bodies of the civil society. We certainly have responsibility when it comes to the institutions, and there is an accountability when it comes to small-sized and large-sized companies. However, in Italy, and in particular in Italy, the existence of the intermediate bodies have always been important because of their ability to observe the situation. And President of Confagricoltura, Giansanti, maybe can provide us with his point of view in this respect. Thank you very much for having me. I would like to start from the title of this encounter, promoting growth and supporting the weakest. I would like to give you a datum belonging to the general context, and then I will dwell on Italian aspects. So we have two certainties within a few years. The world's population is going to grow. The forecast is that of reaching 10 billion people in 2030. within a few years, and the world GDP will also increase significantly. We still reason in terms of millions of dollars, and today we've reached 8.5 trillion dollars and 180 billion dollars. And all this needs to be accompanied by an agricultural surface which is being decreased. So the challenge will be that of producing more, reducing the farmed surface. It's a mission impossible, so to say, and we should come forward with proposals to be implemented. If we look at the situation of the last couple of years, the COVID-19 pandemic and other external shocks such as the war and the climate change, they have disruptive effects on the market. So I believe that today any government should think about the importance and the strategical importance of the food and agriculture asset, not only for the individual country, but also considered in the light of a world kind of policy. And we should focus on the policy related to nutrition, to food, the energy policies, which are strongly related to agriculture production, and environmental policies as well. So starting from this point, it is evident that if we do not start to consider these aspects, we will not have to be surprised when we listen to the warnings launched by the FAO, telling us that the index of the food prices has come to its threshold, 160, and the basis is 100. Just think about that when we had the COVID pandemic, we reached 98. In 1960, we reached 48. In 2011, the years of the systemic crisis, we had never reached 160. We had reached 134. So in light of this data, there are citizens in the world who are paying more for the food. Many citizens are suffering. We all go to the supermarket to shop, and we all know what it means to buy food. In many areas of the world, people have extreme difficulties in having access to food. So we need to reflect on this respect. If we have 570 million farmers in the world, there is only a small minority of these farmers producing for the market. And the overwhelming majority of farmers have a family kind of business for self-consumption. Just think that in China, think about the economic power of China. 80% of farmers in China have a less than 1 hectare available for farming. All these are family business, and they are kept like that on purpose in order to avoid to prevent people from going to the metropolises. The same data can be applied to some areas of Brazil or sub-Saharan Africa, but these are not the same data in the most developed countries. Today in Europe, we have a farming surface which is higher than the one we have in reality. The companies producing account for about 14%, and they produce about 85% of what we eat. They have 70% of farming surface being managed. So on the one hand, we have a juxtaposition between the small family-owned businesses, and on the other side, we have large farmers who need to guarantee food safety. In the future, we will not be able to afford a slowing down of the process. We cannot imagine that someone else will produce for us. In that growth, in that per capita growth, someone will be called upon to produce more. We're going to have two models. In the developed countries, we will have to guarantee that growth because we have no certainties that developing countries may reach targets. And on the other hand, we will have to work a lot on the countries experiencing difficulties, because there, if we do not start through the transfer of skills, know-how, investments in terms of infrastructure, and investments and strengthening of rural networks in all these countries, we will have more and more disparities between rich countries and poor countries, and a world in which the person has a different importance according to the country where this person is living. But we have a figure. Today in developed countries, we have 1.3 billion citizens suffering from obesity. In the world, we have 860 million people having no access to food. Paradoxically, we have a lot more people in the world having too much choice when it comes to food, vis-à-vis those who have no possibility to have access to food. In the industrialized countries, we have several kilos of food which is wasted every year. And so we need to reflect on this respect, but these reflections must be made by continents, by countries. The time has ended for multilateralism. Today, the responsibility among the big producing countries must be focusing on a large policy devoted to the environment, to production, and to nutrition. And I would add energy policies as well, because today farmers, starting from the land they manage, they use energy to produce foodstuff. So the more energy is expensive, and the more the food in the end will be expensive. So thinking about energy transition and the pathway towards a better world, the farming sector has something very important to say. We will try and increase the quota of renewable resources coming from the farming sector. But we need to have incentives, especially considering the red tape, the bureaucracy. The country must enable all of us to implement these ideas. Otherwise, we will have a very dangerous upcoming season. We are not going to have a war between the industry, a battle between the industry and the small farmers, because everybody is suffering, and those who will bear the cost of all this will be the consumers. The spending for consumers has raised, and it has been increased to 2,300 euros per family. 30% of consumers answered that they do not know what they will do in the future when it comes to their propensity to buy food. 28% of consumers answered we will certainly spend more with buying the same amounts of food, and there's another important quota telling us that they will make the evaluations day by day. They will live on a day-by-day basis. I don't believe this can be a good point of arrival for everybody. So we have a challenge ahead of us, that of focusing on the topics such as nutrition and food. And this topic must become a reality if we are to live in a country where agriculture is at the forefront. If we want to talk about the pact between developed countries and developing countries, we must know where we are heading in Italy and in Europe. We have economic policies imposed by Brussels that do not focus on the safety and the work of farmers. Mr. Garofoli knows better than I do what it means to transform an economic policy into a social policy. We can no longer afford this, and I believe that this must be the time where the person needs to go back to the core of all our reasonings. So the logic of the I, of the ego, must be transformed into the logic of the us. So the symbolic value linking persons and farmers to their land is a very strong bond, and this job will be passed upon from fathers to sons. So we decided to award prizes to 100 people, And we reached 600 agricultural history to have 100 members, associates, to be awarded a prize. So how can we put at risk all this sector? The time has come to make choices. When Cardinal Zuppi yesterday said we need to be bold enough to start focusing on the politics and policy with the capital P. We've had a season of 15, 18 months in which President Draghi managed to place industries and the work of farmers as well to the core of the policies. The future government, the government to be elected, will be called upon to continue along this pathway. The risk is a concrete risk. In the last few days, more wheat is being delivered from Ukraine, but the prices have not decreased. All the products related to wheat has not decreased because you need to bear in mind the cost of logistics, the cost for fueling a ship, either gas oil or gas, we need to bear in mind the international prices. So the real cost of wheat-related products has not decreased over the last few days. So this situation should be regulated according to an integrated social model. If we do not change this situation, the world will be, inequalities will continue and will get deeper in the world, and we will have a disparity. Thank you very much for having made an in-depth analysis of the concerns vis-à-vis the politics and the period we are experiencing now. Well, this may be one of the most important issues, being able to do something vis-à-vis changing a regulatory framework. And I would also like to tell you that within the meeting we have developed an entire pavilion devoted to the topics of frailty and food emergency, which are perfectly in line with what President Giansanti has just said. And the aim is that of documenting how these two aspects can be tackled and how we are involved in all these aspects. Before leaving the floor to the next speaker, I would like to ask Mr. Starace, who is the managing director of Enel. So he has the privilege of having a very exhaustive observatory. So rather than asking you about the initiatives of your group, I would like to ask him to help us with a general view vis-à-vis what you can imagine when it comes to the activity of your group. Thank you for having me. Thank you for this opportunity. And I am glad I have this opportunity to talk to you all, to speak to you all today. And I would like to take the opportunity to thank the government, which is still working, because in the past 18 months, the government sort of swam against the stream. In addition to the COVID-19 pandemic, we are still in the midst of a war, inflation, shortage of water in several European countries. So the government had a really challenging task. But despite this, the agenda of the National Resilience Plan has been brought forward. We were guilty of many things, and the current energy crisis has an impact in Europe. But we also have a hope, because the National Resilience and Recovery Plan is a tool for growth and economic recovery and equality. Because we talked about the weakest, we always had to tackle with the weakest people. The weak have always existed, and they will continue to exist. We can give several definitions of the word weakness. If we take a look at the weakness from an economic point of view, we focus on the social parts of our population, people who cannot afford to shop and to buy food every day, or they cannot afford to pay for the energy consumption due to the increase in the prices of the gas. This is an economic weakness, which is an immediate and current and topical economic weakness, which hopefully will not last for years. And then we have a long-term weakness, the weakness coming from the fact that just in Italy, with a school population of 1.2 million people, 190,000 students leave the school. We have a very high drop rate when it comes to school. When it comes to schools, a student simply leaves the school with no alternatives, and all the students leaving schools without having completed their education will be at risk tomorrow. So our difficulty lies in the fact that we should tackle these situations, and we should try and do whatever we can to reduce this pathological school dropout rate. We have 190,000 girls and boys leaving the schools without having any opportunity to find a job, simply because they are no longer interested in studying. Well, you may well understand what the repercussions will be for these young people for the future. This is a long-term weakness we are so concerned about. It will create a social frailty in time, and it is a sort of a mine, a sort of a bomb which may blow up in the future. Just imagine what the consequences of this situation can be in the future. There are many things we can do in the short term, and I believe that the Italian government and the governments of other European countries are doing, is that they are trying to mitigate the impact of the energy, of the cost of the increase in the cost of energy. And unfortunately, I am afraid that this situation will be prolonged more than for more time than we had expected. We should tackle the causes, an unjustified price of the raw material gas, and this is a fundamental element to tackle in order to have the European economic system be safe for the future. This is what President Draghi has tried to do, and hopefully this situation will be solved. Without this solution, all the European countries will finance the transfer of wealth from the weakest to the richest, the opposite of what we should do. And we will continue to increase the wealth of the rich people instead of allocating resources to improve the situation of the weakest. I am confident about the fact that this will happen sooner or later. I know that in other European countries there are other different opinions, other ideas, but I believe that the strength of reasonableness will prevail. We are currently wasting important resources without affecting the main cause, namely the unjustified increase in the cost of the prices of gas. What we think may be done is speeding up and do our best to implement and use all the resources of the NRP. These resources can really change the history in the next couple of years. All the work that has been done and all the investments become real when there are people working to implement and to use these investments. So in the moment in which we have allocated billions of euros to create and to create a work or an infrastructure, and we realize that we no longer need money, we also need people working concretely to transfer an intention into something which is actually being done. This is a beautiful part of our work. We have a possibility to educate and to train dozens of thousands of people to learn a job, because we need this job to be made. We need these professional skills to be developed. In the past, we didn't know whether the NRP would become a reality, but we already knew that we as Enel, we already knew that we would need and the connected companies of 10,000 people properly trained, and we didn't have these people trained. We created some training centers thanks to the support of the Eni company, and we started to raise the awareness of the other companies, because we knew that these companies wouldn't have the skilled staff available as soon as the investments and the money would become available. So we have started training the first 5,500 experts, or almost more than 1,000 of them have already been trained, and they have already found a job. So this is something which can help bridge the gap and improve the situation of the weakest. These people, if they are properly trained, they manage to find a job. They will become more passionate, and they can use this job for as long as this job is needed, and they have a chance to understand what an industrial activity is. This is a possibility which is available for many companies working in precarious conditions. So we've tried to anticipate the needs, training in advance people who we knew would be needed, not only for the Enel, but also for all the companies linked to our activity. We believe that this kind of situation, this kind of a need is not always properly considered. First of all, because the economic developments in the past took place gradually, and so almost nobody understood the need for the labor quantity, whereas in the case of the NRP forces a reasoning in terms of number of people that have to be trained. And secondly, because there's a certain kind of habit on the part of the average company in Italy to wait for the need, knowing that there are unemployed people you can hire. But when this happens, you have missed the opportunity. So this time we try to act in advance, and we are being proven that we were right. I would like to conclude with several observations regarding our times. We are experiencing quite a dramatic crisis moment. We have a food-related crisis. We know that the increase of the food and of our shopping cart will be of 30 to 40%. We know that the energy prices have increased. The inflation is increasing. And then we have the elections ahead of us, which are always a moment of discontinuity and a moment in which topics are becoming more and more extremist, so to say. We need to have a long-term vision. And if we have a long-term vision, we may find some comfort and some hope. If we continue with the good work carried out by the current government, and if we continue to use the investments of the RP. If the seeds become a good harvest, we really have the possibility to change our country, to become more independent, and to be more independent when it comes to gas provision and gas supply, and we can finally become more independent, and we can depend more on our own intelligence and skills rather than continuing depending on others, on other countries. So we do have a hope, provided we concretely implement the National Resilience Plan. Thank you. Thank you to Mr. Starace. I think that then Mr. Garofoli will have a last round before the end of this meeting, but I would like to ask President of Centromarca to give us his point of view. And probably you can also talk a bit about the recruitment when it comes to your sector, which is probably an interesting topic in your sector as well. We have not talked about recruitment and job creation and training of people, but it has to do with the gap.
Lasciatemi un attimo
Thank you. Well, allow me to list the 3 conditions that are used to help the weakest. First of all, generation of wealth. Second, redistribution. And third, training and education. And I would like to add a fourth pillar, that is the right use of resources. The first point refers to the ability to create the right conditions so that a company can thrive. And this is connected to several factors. First of all, the right kind of competitive environment, respect of the law, having a government that can intervene, act rapidly, with the ability to implement their ideas. And we have the Undersecretary Garofoli with us. And he's a civil servant, he's not a politician. Otherwise, this morning he would have mentioned all the successes that Italy has had. Italy last year grew at the highest rate. This has never happened to us in the last 20 years. And this was not achieved through big declarations, but by working on details with a lot of technical issues, but with the ability of really having an impact, a positive impact on the country. Second point, the reallocation of wealth. It's a very political issue. So how much of the wealth should go to those who created the wealth and how much should go to the weakest part of the population? So first of all, we should consider work as a priority. So those who work should be able to enjoy the results of the work. Second point, we need something that encourages people to be active, to be entrepreneurs, without forgetting the weakest part of the population. And then third, we have training and education. And in this case, I think we are losing quality of our training, and we really don't see the needs of the labor market. So there is a gap between what companies need and what the labor market offers. In Italy, we have significant humanistic culture, but nowadays this is not exactly what companies require. The STEM world, the STEM world, so chemistry, physics, mathematics, and so on, sees a very huge, very high demand. But in this country, for the last decades, we have prevented young people from studying medicine. And then after 20 years, we realized that we don't have enough doctors. That means that we have impoverished one of the most important jobs in the world for no reason. That is why the ability of the government to act is very important. And then, for example, we have a shorthand of mechanics. So, and this because our education system has a very peculiar view of training for mechanics. And then we have the correct use of resources. So as we heard before, there is obesity on the one hand and the lack of food, shortage of food on the other. So, but we need to go beyond the economic issue. Because, of course, the economic world has an influence, plays a role. But we also know that we have people that are set aside when they still have resources to offer, both in economic terms and in social terms. And I would like to conclude with one last point. We talked about 4 pillars to generate things. Nowadays, we see that there is a reduction of value. Inflation is now growing, and by doing this, it is destroying value. It is destroying more value for the weakest part of the population because it affects and it influences and impacts energy products, which are at the basis of Maslow's pyramid. So primary needs. So the ability to react immediately to prevent inflation from becoming huge, this is one of the key points. Thank you. Thank you, Francesco Mutti. Now we have a lot of food for thought, of course. Now I would like to ask Mr. Garofoli to suggest to us what we should expect, or maybe comment on the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. Well, Mr. Starace already mentioned this, that is the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. So what's the situation right now? Well, in the last 18 months, the National Recovery and Resilience Plan has been a huge effort. Our country has to take into account also the weakness of the administrative skills on all levels, national, regional, and local. So there was a significant effort made at an institutional level. And I know that in the afternoon there will be a panel devoted to it with the participation of the presidents of the Italian regions. So what's the situation right now? Are we following the plan? Are we lagging behind? Well, according to the agreement that was signed and reached with Europe when the plan was presented and approved, we need to make an assessment every 6 months. So to make sure that every 6 months we've achieved the goals that we've set to achieve for the 6-month period. And right now we are perfectly aligned with the goals that we had to achieve. The December objectives have been achieved. You know that they give us financing pending on the achievement of these objectives. And we are fairly certain that June 22 objectives were achieved. We had a doubt, so we issued a decree law for the education system. So we are confident that we have achieved the June objectives, and we are confident that we will achieve the December objective. Some of them are qualitative objectives. For example, figures. So the number of university housing guaranteed to the university system, for example. So the number of university beds that we grant to the different universities. So we have more than 55 objectives to achieve, goals to achieve in December. But I think we feel quite confident. For this objective, the December objective, that is quite a short-term goal right now. So the implementation stage of the stage that we've just completed, was a moment in which we had to allocate resources to different institutions. Recently, we've completed the procedure to allocate resources for the building of new kindergartens. And we have started the stage for tenders. This stage will last for quite a long time. It's a complex stage. 2022 will be a record year when it comes to the calls for tenders. In July 2022, the level of tenders assigned 2021 had already been a record year compared to 2005. This year, the total amount will be 55 to 56 billion euros. This will be the amount of resources that will be allocated following the tenders, the calls for tenders. So in the next few months, the moment will be a complex one because the local institutions will have to assign different and allocate funds. So, and we all know that local institutions are having a complex situation to manage. In KG, we created a permanent working group with municipalities, and we focused on models that have already given very positive results. For example, urban requalification. We are trying to centralize procedures. Through a framework agreement, municipalities in Italy have the possibility of using, during this very complex phase, public companies that have already demonstrated their ability to act in this area. So as I said, this is an opportunity also right now, because in the next few years, 2023, 24, 25, 26, will allow us to make use of additional resources. We're talking about 35 billion in 2023, 50 and 50 in 2024 and 2025, and 35 in 2026. So it's a really huge opportunity. So for the next government, we will prepare an overview of everything that's been done and everything that is being done right now, so that the government will be able to continue along this way, which is a very complex process. yet a vital process for young people, for women, for citizens, for companies, for the social and economic system of our country. So the National Recovery and Resilience Plan can be looked at from different perspectives, but a very important approach sees this plan as an attempt to bridge several gaps. We heard about them before, inequalities in the agricultural field, for example, or global inequalities, not just Italian ones, of course. There are strong inequalities, social ones, gender ones, territorial ones, and this recovery plan was designed to at least reduce them. So it's very important that we continue to follow this plan despite its complexity. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Garofoli. Unfortunately, we don't have much time left. So I would like to thank our guests for helping us get a clearer perspective on this situation. Of course, all the food for thought that we've been given, we won't forget them. So thank you. I would like to thank Starace and Bemporad, who were connected through streaming, and Mr. Mutti, Mr. Garofoli, Mr. Giansanti, and thank you very much for your participation.
Civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
I sogni hanno la forza di connetterci al futuro. Ci trasmettono l'energia che nasce dal desiderio. Ma a volte i nostri sogni si connettono con quelli di qualcun altro e insieme conquistano il mondo.
Pronto?
Una cosa così. Il cuore è un po' più...
Tridimensionale.
Per me è la migliore.
Team, la forza delle connessioni.
Tutti viviamo momenti unici che vogliamo proteggere. Scegli Immagina adesso di Generali, un'unica polizza che evolve con te. Contatta subito i nostri agenti Generali per scoprire la soluzione più adatta a te. Prima della sottoscrizione leggere il set informativo su generali.it. Generali, partner di vita.
Mi ricordo il giorno che siamo partiti per il nostro viaggio. Anche se è stato molto tempo fa. Già allora avevamo grandi obiettivi. Volevamo contribuire al progresso del nostro paese e renderlo un posto sempre migliore. E e ci siamo impegnati ogni giorno per farlo. Come in tutti i viaggi, strada facendo il nostro bagaglio si è riempito. Di ricordi, di emozioni, di esperienza. Ogni persona che abbiamo incontrato ha contribuito a rendere la nostra squadra più forte. Passo dopo passo abbiamo camminato sempre più veloce per avvicinarci al futuro. Dopo 60 anni il nostro percorso continua insieme verso un domani migliore. 60 anni di futuro e di energia.